Hey everyone, I'm David Berkowitz with AI Marketers Guild by Marketecture, and welcome to another edition of AI Insiders. And so we've got the World Cup of research going on today. I'm hoping I'm not screwing with any trademarks here, so I'll try not to mention any association names or anything like that. But we've got a repeat guest. So Nate Elliott of eMarketer gets to have it's still a fairly short list of who's in that repeat guest list because we always want to bring a variety of views here, but fortunately Nate always has a fresh batch of research and a lot of new perspectives he's looking at. And so Nate, always glad to have you as part of not just the AI Marketers Guild crew, but the broader Marketecture speaker family. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I love the group. I love attending, and I love getting to present here.
Well, the floor is yours. I'm curious how people are actually using AI these days and not just stuff that I'm making up about it. So
All
when I
right,
actually see what's real.
sounds good. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining today. Thanks, David, for creating this space and for inviting me back to it. I want to talk today about how consumers really use AI and about what that means for marketers. And here's the thing: no one in any group needs me to tell them that the growth of AI usage has exploded. Certainly, no one in this group needs me to tell them that. And yet, I'm from eMarketer. So I've got the receipts. We have the forecasts, and I thought I'd share one with you right off the bat. Yes, AI adoption is skyrocketing. This is our latest forecast that looks at how many people in the US, how many internet users in the US are prompting a Gen AI chatbot at least weekly. And it is a fairly narrow definition, right? We did that on purpose. We're talking about not just people coming in contact with AI or seeing AI generated content, but active usage, people going to a generative AI tool, an LLM, and prompting it. And we're looking at it weekly, not monthly, because I think if you only use ChatGPT as often as you pay the rent or the mortgage, then you're not really using ChatGPT. But you can see, for the month or so that ChatGPT existed in 2022, only 1% of US internet users were prompting an AI at least weekly. And that number has grown basically on a linear scale since then. 13% in 23, 21% in 24, 30% last year. We're forecasting that 40% of US internet users will prompt an AI chatbot at least once per week in 2026. But here's the thing. When we focus just on the big numbers, we're missing a lot of detail. And one of my concerns, I think one of the challenges we face as an industry, as an AI industry, as a marketing industry, because I'm a marketer, I come from that space and I talk a lot to marketers and people selling advertising opportunities. If we focus just on the big shiny top line numbers of AI adoption, if we focus on technology, then we're missing a lot of incredibly important detail. We can see that people are there, but we don't necessarily know who those people are, why they've gone there, what they're doing. And that's all the stuff that, from a marketer's perspective at least, is the most important information that you would need to successfully leverage a tool or a channel for marketing purposes. And so what we've done at eMarketer is try to convey this idea that technology on its own is not the best way to track AI adoption. If you're just looking at tool usage, if you're just looking at overall adoption, how many people use AI, like on that first forecast slide, it's a useful number, but it's not the most useful number. It's not the best way to track adoption. Even if you're looking a little more granularly, if you're looking at ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Claude, which, by the way, there's a surprising dearth of really credible data on side-by-side usage across those tool sets in the US or in any other market. Um, but even if you have that data and you look at just tools side by side, that's also not the best way to track AI adoption for two reasons. Number one, because AI platform preferences are changing incredibly quickly, right? If you go back to January of 2025, ChatGPT, according to SimilarWeb, had almost 87% of global generative AI web traffic share. And it is only web traffic. It doesn't include app-based So I'll put that caveat on it, but we've seen similar large shifts in the app-based data as well. 87%, give or take, of worldwide generative AI web traffic share. If you fast forward that to a couple of months ago, that's down to 53.7%. They've lost almost 40% of their share. They've lost 33 percentage points of share in just this 15-month window. Meanwhile, Gemini has basically 5x'd in that time in terms of share. Claude, in case you're wondering, is a big number in that other category. It's about 8% in that April data. That's more than 5x'd in that 15-month window as well. And it's not just that users are shopping around, it's a couple other things. Number one, as more people adopt AI technology, and as more people go and use these chatbots, of course, there's a lot of new users who are picking platforms they want to go to and work with. Of course, it's a little bit more fluid than in a more established market, but also the platforms themselves are encouraging this trial behavior and making the market more fluid. I actually sat down just this morning and did the analysis. And during the same time period that you see on the screen right now, January of 2025 until April of 2026, OpenAI introduced at least 20 new models. 20 new models in 15 months. And that doesn't include the significant updates and refreshes they made to existing models. Anthropic released, I think, 11 new models that time. Google released at least 9 new models in that time. If you're constantly pushing new tools and new versions of tools at people, of course, they're going to keep trying. They're going to keep taste testing, and that's going to encourage a lot of change. But the fact that AI platform preferences change quickly is one of the reasons that we don't think just looking at the technology is the right way to understand how people are using AI. The other piece of it is the human motivation remains steady in the face of this technology change. So let me go to the chat and ask you guys to pop in. What do you think the answer is to this question? Yes, Barry, I will be sharing the PowerPoint afterwards. What do you think the answer is to the question? What are the primary reasons that people use the internet? So top 2 reasons. What are your guesses? So business, to make money, communication, research. I'm seeing a lot of search information. I'm seeing some shopping, entertainment, but most people are saying search, and there's a mix of communication, shopping, entertainment, things like that. Well, GWI has been asking this question for a while now, and in 2025, they asked the question, the number one reason people around the world said they used the internet was to find information. Almost 61% of people said that was their reason. The number 2 reason was to connect with friends and family. So anyone who said communication was right on the second one. Gene, if you're doom scrolling as one of your top 2 reasons to use the internet, then maybe it's time to buy one of those brick devices for your phone. But last year, 2025, finding information, connecting with friends and family, number 1 and number 2. And here's the thing, GWI has been asking this question for a while. One of the things I've been doing in my spare time is going and looking for old versions of this survey. In 2024, they're the top 2. In 2023, in 2022, 2021, 2020, I've gone and seen this data as far back as I think 15 years ago. And the wording of the question was different, but the top 2 reasons people used the internet remained the same. Finding information and what GWI calls staying in touch with friends and family. What I have listed here is connecting with friends and family, and you'll see why I have listed it as connecting as opposed to staying in touch in a little bit. I think they're fundamentally similar concepts, but connecting actually works a bit better in the AI era than just staying in touch with friends and family does. Human motivations for why people use the internet have remained steady for as far back as I can find the data. People want to find information and they want to connect. They want to stay in touch and interact with other people. But there's another reason that studying technology is not the best way to understand people's AI adoption and what to do about it as a marketer. And it's the simple fact that technology cannot define strategy. I've talked to so many clients who say that their bosses, whether it's a CMO, the head of sales, a CEO, someone else in your organization, is saying stuff like, get us on ChatGPT or figure out how we need to use AI. And I've been around long enough that I've seen this movie before, right? A CEO or CMO saying, get us onto ChatGPT is not any more of a sound strategy than a CEO saying 10 years ago, get us on Facebook, or a CEO saying 20 years ago, get us on iPhone, or a CEO 30 years ago saying, get us on AOL. And companies who just focus on the technology, on the shiny object that they can see and that consumers are flocking to, those are the companies that tend to spend a lot of money and resources chasing their own tails and not having sound business strategies. Because technology has never been the right way to define technology, to define strategy. Motivation, human motivation for using those tools has always been a more sound way of defining a strategy. So technology can't define strategy, but motivation defines opportunity. And so what I think we need to be looking at, instead of just how many people use chatbots, how many people use chatbot A versus chatbot B, I think we need to think more about why people are turning to these technologies in the first place. It's important if you're making the tools and hoping to attract people to your chatbot or your AI tool compared to somebody else's. But from my perspective, from my clients' perspectives at eMarketer, it's incredibly important if you're looking for ways to market to talk to, and to sell to people through these tools. And you can see on the screen right now some data from one of our recent forecasts on the top selling digital ad marketplaces, the top revenue for all US digital ad sellers in the US this year. And Meta is on top of that list, mostly Instagram and Facebook. Alphabet is second on that list, mostly Google and a little bit of YouTube. And here's the thing that I can't help but notice. The top two ad sellers by far both cater overwhelmingly to the top two reasons people go on the internet in the first place. I don't think it's an accident that these things, finding and connecting, are the main reasons people go online, and that the companies that do the best job of catering to people's desire to find and to connect are the top two ad sellers online. That's a straight line for me, right? This is what people want to do when they use the internet and digital technology. These are the properties that have gotten the biggest, and they are the ones where advertisers say that they're finding the most opportunity, and they're voting with their wallets.
Hey, Nate,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think on our last conversation, or certainly on other AI AIMG calls, we've talked a lot about UX is going to win in the end, right? If you're asking who's going to win the AI race, the people who are meeting a consumer in their journey are the people who have the advantage. And I think I'm just playing back what I'm seeing here is that you're reinforcing that message that if the consumer journey is driven primarily by connecting and finding, then that starts to tilt things in favor of players who are serving just that. It's just my thoughts.
It does, and I'm going to go ahead and circle something on the screen right now. I think it tilts the marketplace in favor of Alphabet, especially in favor of Google, because here's the thing. The connecting and actually finding is one and connecting is two. Finding and connecting are the top motivations people have for using the internet. But I wanted to go out and find out what are the top motivations people have for using AI specifically, because you can drill down into any of these different tool sets, right? If you say to people, why do you go to social networks? Finding's not on top of that list anymore. If you ask people, why do you go to search engines? Then connecting's not, second on that list anymore. So it does matter to drill down into the different channels and tools people are choosing to use, not because, again, focusing on those tools is the right way to understand people's usage, but because it allows you to say, in this context, when they're on this website or open in this app, what is it that they're trying to accomplish? What's the human need and the human motivation that has brought them there? And this may sound cynical, but it's kind of marketing 101. What can we as a brand do to tap into, to leverage that human need, that human motivation, to get our message across and to convince people that we are a solution to their needs? And so what we've done, and I don't know how to erase that, So that was very wise of me. Clear all drawings. There we go. So what we've done is to study what motivates customers to use AI in the first place, right? What we think brands should do is to take a look not just at what tools and technologies people are using when they turn to AI, but to figure out why they're turning to AI in those moments. What are the things they're trying to solve? What are the needs they're trying to solve? And again, what can brands do to try to take advantage of that? And so we have gone out, we conducted a large survey this spring, just published it in the last couple of weeks. For the first time, we introduced some of it at Cannes, and the report's coming out in actually a couple of weeks from now. But what we've done is asked a couple thousand people in the US, do you use AI? And then why? What are the things that you're actually trying to get done? And we've built this analytical model that we call the building blocks of AI adoption. And so we start from the bottom up because it's building blocks, right? And by far the number one thing that people are trying to do is to use it by using AI is to find information or explanations. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean advice. It doesn't mean shopping. The way that we worded these questions is people looking for facts, people looking for explanations on stuff like, why is the sky blue, right? People are curious. And the number one reason they're going to AI is not just for search-like behavior, because that encompasses so much. It encompasses advice and shopping and navigation and lots of other things. But what we've been able to identify with our survey is that actually by far, number one reason people are going to AI, it is a search-like behavior, but it's just a core curiosity. They're hoping that these tools can get them facts they can't find elsewhere, or give them explanations that they can't find elsewhere. And in our survey, more than 51% of US internet users aged 15 to 80 said that they were using AI for these behaviors, something we call asking in this model, at least once each week. Number 2 on this list is what we call doing. And this is really using AI to make your life work better. It's using AI for personal productivity, getting advice on things like health, on travel, on DIY, on cooking, on finances, on anything in your life that you want advice or help with. It's getting advice and guidance on those, and it's helping you with your personal tasks, managing a budget, a calendar, a schedule, maps and directions, translations, understanding a legal document you need to sign, all the things you need to do in your personal life that maybe you need some extra help with. We call that doing. And about 1/3 of people online in the US say that they're doing that with AI at least once each week. Just behind that is, and I'm surprised at this now, this is where the model starts to surprise me, because I thought shopping would be coming in about here, and it's not there yet. But about 30% say that they're using AI for what we call play. They're using AI to pass time or for fun. They're just asking it questions to ask questions. They are using character AI, or they're using AI capabilities, whether it's text, image, video, audio creation, just for the purpose of playing around, for having fun, for entertaining themselves. Next on the list is what we call working. And about 1/4 of US internet users in the survey said that they use AI for working at least once each week. And we define working both as using AI to get your paid job done, but also we include school work and school tasks in that working category. So these are people who are trying to be successful or efficient or effective in not in their personal lives, not in their hobbies, but in the thing that they are primarily tasked with doing, whether that's work or school. And now shopping comes in. Again, I'm a little surprised that shopping wasn't higher up. We hear a lot about it. Certainly talking to marketers and online retailers, I hear a lot about shopping as an AI behavior. About 1 in 7 people online, 1 in 6 people online say that they're using AI to find and compare products, to compare prices in stores and shipping speeds, and to ultimately make a decision on where to purchase something on at least a weekly basis. 16.6% of people say that they use AI for shopping. And the last thing in our model is connecting. And this is why I talk about staying in touch with friends and family from that GWI data as connecting, because I think connecting is a good shorter word for what people are talking about in their number 2 reason they go online. I think it also fits why almost 10% of internet users turn to AI at least once each week. and that's to look for connection. And there was some talk in the chat about the loneliness epidemic and are people really connecting with social media, really connecting online? I think that explains in some extent why almost 1 in 10 people online today are using AI for connection on a weekly basis or more. They're turning to AI to be a friend, to be a companion, or to act as a therapist. But what you see on the screen isn't how many people are using Nano Banana and VO and how many people are using, the ChatGPT shopping model versus health model. What you see is the actual human motivations, right? These are the reasons people turn to AI tools. And so if looking for information and then connecting are the top two reasons people go online in general, it looks like looking for information, what we call asking here, and then making your life work better, what we call doing in this model, are the top two reasons that people are turning to AI right now. Now, we expect that these behaviors, these motivations that drive people to use AI in the first place, are going to be relatively static. Now, I don't think they're going to be as static as what we saw in that GWI data. People have been online for decades now. It doesn't surprise me that the reasons they go online have stabilized so much over those decades. And obviously, we've had consumer-facing AI chatbots for only about 3.5 years. So there's a lot more up in the air. This will change. The numbers certainly will change over time. The order, I think, has a decent chance of changing every time we go out and do this survey. But we are committed to running this survey at least every 6 months so that we can go and see, we put this in field in April and publish the data in May. We're going to go back into field in October and publish in November, I think. In the fall, we'll do it again next spring and next fall. We'll see both how these numbers grow and whether the order of why people are turning to AI changes over the next 6 months and 12 months and 18 months. The other thing I'll point out is that these behaviors are distributed unevenly, right? The reasons people use AI change when you look at different groups. And it sounds like one of the more obvious statements, but we were surprised by some of the more specific data on how those behaviors change. For instance, I was surprised when we broke this down by generations to see that Gen Z and millennials were nearly identical in almost all of these behaviors. They're literally identical in connecting. They're within half a percentage point in doing. They're within the margin of error for shopping, for working, for playing. The only place there's a statistically significant difference between the groups is asking, and that's just barely significant. A lot of folks, especially in Gen Z, make a lot of noise about hating AI, and yet they are the most active users of AI, both in terms of how many people in that generation use these tools, in terms of how often they use these tools, and in terms of how deep their motivations are for using those tools. And that's what I find interesting when I look at different audience cuts in a format like this, because we can see not just that Gen Z and millennials are using AI tools more overall, but that they're using it for a broader variety of reasons to solve a broader set of their problems and their human needs. And so when we look at something like Gen X, if you just look at AI adoption on, say, a monthly or weekly basis, Gen X isn't that far behind millennials and Gen Z. But if you look at each of these individual motivations, you can see the numbers are much, much lower. They're less than half as likely as Gen Z and millennials to use AI for working. They're half as likely to use it for connecting. They're half as likely to use it for doing. The overall adoption for Gen X isn't half the overall adoption for Gen Z and millennials, but for so many of these behaviors, it is half or even lower. And what that tells us is not just that they've been slower as a generation to adopt AI overall, but that they're also using it in a much shallower way. It's not as much a part of their, not just daily behavior, but it's not as much a part of their mental availability when it comes time for them to solve some problems. And of course, boomers are over there on the right, and predictably, those are some of the lower numbers here. There will be generational changes that help drive up the use of these technologies over the next 5 and 10 and 15 years. There are lots of other ways that we look at this data as well. For instance, we know that urban populations, we know that wealthy populations are much more likely to use AI on a regular basis and to use it more deeply than more rural and lower income populations. We know, for instance, that men are significantly more likely than women to use AI on a daily or weekly basis, but that once you get past that difference in adoption, the behaviors of those who do use AI look strikingly similar, whether you're talking about men or women, right? So fewer women use the tools than men, but once you sort of drill down into those audiences, the way they use the tools doesn't look significantly different. One of my favorite ones is parents. Parents are twice as like people with children under 18 at home are more than twice as likely to use AI on a weekly basis, and they use it in a much deeper way, right? I think David is a great example of this. David, you've got stuff going on. If something can make your life a little easier, you're going to go ahead and use that technology. And
Amen.
we see that in the parent data. We see, different types of shoppers, people who shop in different categories online and who spend different amounts of money using AI at different clips. There's a lot of incredible data here. I'm really excited to share more of it as we get a chance to analyze more of it and publish more of it in the coming weeks and months. Yeah, I forgot I had a slide on it. Here's some of the data I was talking about. Higher spending shoppers are more likely to use AI. They're 3 times more likely. The highest spending online shoppers are 3 times more likely to use AI for shopping. And that may sound obvious, but again, 3x is an incredible number. So if you're trying to sell things online, it's not just that your audience is using AI, they're actively using it for shopping at a clip that we simply don't see in any of these other categories. So we see all these differences in AI motivations, in AI behaviors, and it's really important for marketers to lean into these differences in motivation. And when we think about what this actually means for marketers, we think that companies hoping to use AI as a channel, right, to use these tools as a way to reach these audiences, need to ask 3 questions. Number one, you do need to start with how many of our customers use AI. Because listen, there are certain audiences that simply aren't using the tools very much, right? So if you're targeting older populations like baby boomers and older, if you're targeting rural, poorer populations, there are large groups of people where this simply is not the right channel at this point to try to reach out to those audiences. Understanding the percentage of your audience that goes to these tools and prompts them each week is going to define how important AI is to your marketing plan. But while that's the first question, in terms of logical order, it's not the most important question. The most important question is, why do your customers use AI? Those motivations that we talked about, it's not about, what device are they using and which model are they turning to. Again, this stuff matters, but the most important thing by far as a marketer is understanding the motivations that drive your customers to use AI. That's how you define the marketing strategies. That's how you define, what messages and at what points in the customer journey you can reach people. Because here's the thing, if you go back to those building blocks, you go back to that pyramid model, shopping isn't real high on that list, right? 16.6% of people say that they're using AI of online users in the US say they're using AI on a weekly basis for shopping. But twice as many say they're using AI for some kind of personal productivity, for what we call doing. Well, that's a marketing opportunity. People aren't going on and saying, show me the best sneakers, but they're saying, hey, I want to try to get healthier. What can I do to lose a few pounds and feel better? It's the same marketing opportunity for a sneaker brand or for a running apparel brand. In fact, the one where people are trying to make their lives better is probably a better marketing opportunity than certainly a better branding opportunity than people just asking for the best sneakers. So looking at why your customer is using AI is going to give you a big leg up on understanding the marketing strategy you should pursue. And then finally, look at the tools. And again, technology is not strategy. We can't start there. It's never going to be the most important question. But when you ask these other questions first, is AI even a channel to reach our audience right now? And if it is, what are our customers doing with AI? Once you know the answers to those, of course, you need to understand which platforms and which features people are leaning into. We collected that data as well, and and that will help you define your tactics for marketing to people in AI. We've got this data. Pew does a great job of collecting some of this data. A lot of other folks are working on it in various ways. We think that building blocks model is a really innovative way to understand question two, what we think is the most important question. Why are people using AI? Not just which tools and features are they using, but if you can find the answers to these questions, then we think as a marketer, as a seller, you're on the right path to developing a marketing strategy. So just to wrap it up, and we'll get to about 10 minutes of questions before, unfortunately, I need to go. Technology is not strategy, but motivation does define opportunity. And so understand that people use AI not as a technology that's cool. Some people do, but most people are turning into it. Once you get to the multi-billion stage, it's not just a cool technology. People use this stuff if it solves their needs. Understand that the motivations, the needs people try to solve with AI are not evenly distributed, and build your marketing strategy in AI as a channel around these questions. How many of your customers use AI? Why your customers use AI? And then finally, least importantly, you can get to which AI tools your customers use. So thank you guys very much. And I know there's a lot going on in the chat. I was trying to keep one eye on it over there, but again, I do have some time for questions. So let me dig in. Dave, Nadell, you're saying I'd love to see this as a B2B for work only panel. Absolutely. It's one of the things that we're working on. My colleague, Kelsey Voss, ERD marketer, is our lead analyst on B2B marketing. And one of the things that that she is hoping to do very soon is to use the cut of people who are using this for work purposes and have a look at their behaviors, their motivations, their tools, and a lot of other stuff. If you guys have questions, David, your kid is now so over AI. It's was bound to happen that if you said the letters AI to your kid enough times, and I'm imagining that since it's what you do for a living, you say it every now and then, that
Yeah.
there would be some counter reaction to that.
But she's like, it's funny because like she's very anti-AI for things that she already likes doing, like cooking. But she's, I think, more open to it if it's, say, like vibe coding, like the new version of the lemonade stand, yeah, that like helps her do something new and makes her money. So, and she's 12, by the way, so
Yeah.
a little scary, but very, very practical.
Yeah. So I have the opposite. So my son's 21, a junior, rising to senior in architecture. And he's, I told him he got points off because he didn't understand the New York State building regulations because they're tomes. I'm like, that is a perfect use case for AI, dude. Like, you know, like he's been brought up in academia to think using AI is cheating, and they've been discouraged and threatened, and one little bit of AI and they're scared, which
Yeah.
I think is counterproductive.
Well, and you also see, you see millennials walking out of college graduation ceremonies and speakers talk about AI, holding up protest banners. And yet the data says that across that entire generation, they are the most active users of AI.
Yeah, I mean, like Nate, just in your decades of research and like kind of dating back to this real spread of the internet, that like, have you seen cognitive dissonance like this?
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. I
Yeah.
mean, people, I made a joke about the brick device earlier.
Right.
As someone was saying doom scrolling was one of their top two digital behaviors. With digital technology overall, this question of whether we're spending too much time on it, what it's doing to our brain, to our time connecting to other people, and all of those concerns have come as adoption and time spent with these technologies continues to rise. Social media is perhaps the most obvious one, right?
Mhm.
People are constantly concerned with their social usage. They take social media breaks, sometimes very publicly and performatively, and yet time spent overall with social platforms has only gone in one direction for 15 years.
But I feel like the social backlash came more later, whereas this is like in parallel. It's a midterm election issue. Now people don't want the stuff in their backyard. So it's like I feel like there's been this shortening of that cycle this time around.
Yeah, I mean, Zuckerberg never said you're going to lose your job to Facebook.
Mhm.
Certainly, that's one of the challenges.
Mhm.
You know, we asked people in the survey, are they more positive or negative? And overwhelmingly, they're negative. We asked people if they think it'll, improve productivity, and they generally say no. Creativity, they say absolutely not. We ask people if it should be regulated, and they say yes. By whom? They have different answers, but across the board, there's just a lot of negativity, and I think some of the statements and actions of the founders and heads of these companies are one of the reasons why. But it's not just the companies, right? The companies have made it okay for other company founders to blame AI for some of their negative behaviors. Right, the number of CEOs citing AI is the reason for massive layoffs when we know that that's not true, right? It's very clear that AI can't do, the 20,000 jobs that major tech companies one by one are shedding. Um, it just I understand the negativity. I understand why it's happened faster, but the cognitive dissonance you refer to isn't new. It's just accelerated, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that.
So, Gene, go for it.
Oh, I mean, it was just a follow up on the doom scrolling. I think the doom scrolling for me is more related to your number one thing, which is connecting, which we discussed a little bit in the chat. Are people really connecting? Because loneliness and depression are at an all-time high related to social media. And, young girls are committing suicide because of like the poor body image they have of themselves based upon what they see on social media from these influencers.
Yeah, I mean, there are endless problems. So it's interesting to me that social tools that started out as points of connection are now largely just content, right? There's much more content from people you don't know when you go onto Facebook or Instagram or most of these other tools than there is content from people that you do know. And, that has, I think, led to a lot of these challenges. So it's not just connecting that people are doing when they go to Meta properties, when they go to TikTok. I mean, by far the most social place online is probably Reddit at this point. And I was a social media analyst at Forrester for years. I don't think I ever wrote a report or got a customer request about Reddit, even though it was then and is now the most fundamentally social place online. It's just not what we mean when we say social media as an industry. So
Reddit's definitely like under the radar social media platform. I mean, I use it daily.
In an era of GEO, I wouldn't say it's under the radar. I'd say it's way way more popular and way more well known.
Yeah, what I read is like brands are just now really starting to leverage it in a big way.
Yeah.
Up until a year ago, you didn't see like Coca-Cola's and such on those platforms.
Well, behaviorally speaking, Reddit is very interesting because it is such a niche platform where you can find, the microcosm of thing that or people that you're looking for. So it's people in their native environment. So it's much more realistic.
And coming over here, I was wondering, I wonder, hundreds of years ago, I wonder if some people were saying the same thing about the light bulb, right? Like, I wonder if there are articles being written. So, hey, man, this light bulb thing is ruining our lives because now we're all staying up late and all this thing. And I think that did happen years ago. Two questions. On the first or second slide with the pyramid, do you think which of those smaller bars do you think is going to get bigger quicker? That's the first one. And then the second one is, did you get a sense of any difference by either geography? And this is all the United States, I assume. Like, is it okay to think that maybe big cities, but I see on YouTube farmers using AI all the time. So curious about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so yes, we saw big differences in geography, and we look at urban versus suburban versus rural, it's basically a straight line decline in terms of AI adoption. Now, that's not universally true. Of course, by definition, we're looking at averages across, the sample that we collected is trying to stand in for, almost 300 something million US internet users in that age range. And so there will always be individual examples of folks who defy what we'd expect to see based on their demographics when you talk to them one-on-one. The thing that I make sure I point out is we're in an echo chamber, right? When we come to these meetings on Wednesday afternoons, when we go to Lens First Wednesday happy hour, we're talking to people who use this stuff a lot, and we are very much not the average. It's useful to look at the survey data, if for no other reason than to remind ourselves that there are a lot of different kinds of people who use these tools in a lot of different kinds of ways, and some people don't use these tools at all. In any given week, most people don't use AI. That's unbelievable to, when you look around a room like this one or any other industry event, but that is the reality of where we are. In any given week, most people don't choose to use AI. Now, they're encountering it when they go to Google and see an AI overview, when they go to Amazon and see a Rufus review summary. You encounter it all day, every day, whether you want to or not. But most people don't choose to use these tools still on a regular basis. And it's important to know that and to look at sort of this broader lens of people in general, especially if you're a marketer targeting people in general, right?
For sure. Do you think governments know, could be used for good and bad? Because we were at another event, and we're wondering, like, is anybody going into, lower income communities and teaching people, how do you make your SNAP benefits, better, like last longer with that? How do you navigate the healthcare system if you're a single mother of 4 kids, living, wherever, right? And everybody thought that was a great idea, but, do you think that this is on the government's roadmap to kind of put it not in with social benefits, but to let people know that how they can use their social benefits even better to maybe make a better life?
Yeah, I have to imagine it'll show up in terms of digital literacy programs. It'll probably take some time, but yeah, I mean, I don't know who's going to do that. The AI platforms have bigger fish to fry, and frankly, those are not the types of consumers they think are likely to pay them a monthly subscription fee, and it's not necessarily the kind of folks who the advertisers are selling to or trying to target. So they are less interested in doing it, and it'll be up to local governments to try to do that is my guess. But we're now getting into stuff that is beyond my remit as a marketing analyst. I do have to run, unfortunately, in just another minute or two, but any other big questions people have?
So, well, Nate, what are you going to be looking at next?
Well, number one, I can't wait to dig into more of this data. We got the data back like a week before I went to Cannes, and I had to present some of it in Cannes, and so I was able to spend some time with it, but had to very quickly go into the mode of analyzing the shinier, more notable parts of this. And there's so much in here I can't wait to dig into on my own, but also, at eMarketer, while I'm the only analyst who has AI in my title at eMarketer, of course, the dozens of other analysts at eMarketer all cover AI within the industries that they're focused on, whether it's banking or pharma and healthcare or retail media or social and creator or whatever. And there's data that they can use for their industries in this survey. So I can't wait to sit down with all those other analysts and help them find and use and think about the data that's what they're covering what they're working on. We're also going to be putting into field. I just put the finishing touches last night on an executive survey so we can get more understanding of both how marketers and their agencies are using AI as a channel, which is basically what we talked about today, but also as a tool to do their jobs better, and collect some hopefully clean, robust first-party data. Because one of my challenges in the year or so I've been doing this for eMarketer is the industry at large. When we go out and look at the data that everyone else is publishing, we wish it was better, and so we're trying to create as much of that better data as we can. To share with all of you guys.
Thank you, Nate. This was a ton of fun.
All right. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to come back, hopefully another time.
We're ready for you. The invite's open.